Hello! So today I wanted to make a tutorial about mining Ravencoin on Fiji-based cards like this R9 Fury Nitro I have here. Um, these are a bit older cards, but as you'll see later, they're actually quite powerful when it comes to mining Ravencoin. They do require tuning though, so I'll be showing you how to do that on Windows, but keep in mind that since we'll be BIOS modding the cards, pretty much everything we'll do here will work on HiveOS or RaveOS or any other Linux-based distribution. So first thing we will want to do is go into this folder. I have provided it in the description of this video. But if you do not trust it, this is basically what you will want to download from Google: ATI1 Flash and Fiji BIOS Editor. So we will open the folder. We will go into ATI1 Flash, and first thing we will do is extract the BIOS, the default BIOS of the card, and save it somewhere. I'll save it in this case on the desktop, and we will call it bios.rom. Save. Okay, so it should appear. There it is. Next, what we want to do is go into Fiji BIOS Editor, and here we want to click Open, and we will open the BIOS that we just created here. So what we want to do is go to Power Play Tables, and we can start changing these settings. Now, if you want to find out what's stable for your card, I can recommend going into AMD Radeon software and playing around with here in the Performance tab under Tuning. If you click Enable on these, you will be able to change basically what we're changing here, but you'll be able to do it in real time within Windows. The reason why you will want to flash these settings into the BIOS rather than just keeping it on here is in case of a system crash or anything like that, basically they can get reset and go back to default. If that happens while mining, you're basically left with a room heater, and you might degrade your cards over time if you don't notice it or anything like that, or something like that, because it's not really a good idea to mine on these cards at default settings. They just get way too hot. So anyway, basically after you've found what settings work, and I will suggest a couple of settings here, probably the safest thing you can do is say around 925 megahertz here. This is basically the sweet spot. Anywhere between 925 megahertz and 980 megahertz is the sweet spot for these cards, and for other GCN based cards as well, typically. Basically, we're gonna set 925 megahertz here, and what I found to be the lowest stable voltage at this frequency for this particular card is 1036 millivolts. Now, this is actually my worst performing card when it comes to frequency and voltage. I have a couple of other cards, and they all do something along the lines of 967 millivolts here instead. So definitely you're gonna probably be able to do lower voltage than what I can do right here. And do keep in mind that if you're playing around with voltage, the voltage controller on the cards goes within 16 millivolt steppings, so you will only be able to adjust at around 16 millivolts at a time. You don't have too much fine control there. So anyway, we're gonna set 1036 voltage here, and pretty much all across the DPM states up until we reach a voltage that is lower than the voltage that we've chosen. And click Save. We're gonna call this, let's say, Kawpow mining.rom. Or we don't even have to say .rom because it says it right here. Save. And here it is. It messed up my icons, but whatever. So, after we've done this, we will want to flash the BIOS we've just created onto our cards. We do this by going to ATI1 Flash again, open as administrator. Click Load Image. Go to the file you just created, Kawpow mining. Open, and now you hit Program. I'm gonna do this live. Hopefully it doesn't mess up the capture or anything like that. So just so you can see what happens. Program. Flashing in progress. Erasing vBIOS, and there it is. Your vBIOS is programmed successfully. Now it will prompt you to reboot the system before the changes take effect. Now, I'll show you what happens if you mess this up in a bit. But let me stop the recording for now, restart, and we'll go from there. Okay, so while shooting this video, I noticed that my card wasn't really tolerant to low voltages. And every time I would boot it up, it would crash when I tried to pretty much do anything in Windows. So I'll take this as an opportunity to show you what exactly you should do if you flash your card and either it won't boot up or maybe it crashes like mine on Windows because you've set the voltage is too low and it doesn't like it. So this is basically how you want to fix that. Hold on a second. You will want to run Fiji BIOS editor, click open and go to the BIOS that you screwed up earlier. Find the voltage settings here, and you will want to input voltage settings which might be a bit higher and potentially more stable. So I'm gonna be doing that right now. Keep in mind that the voltage controller on these cards goes in 16.5 millivolt steppings, so you can't adjust it by less than about 16. So I'm just going to save the file right here. And right now I'm booted, by the way, on the second BIOS. So this is how you should do it as well if you encounter any issues. So I saved the file, I've upped the voltage. And basically what you want to do next is open ATI WinFlash, click load image and find the file that you just created, the BIOS with the more higher voltage. And instead of clicking program like usual, you will want to click the BIOS button on the cards so you can switch it to the corrupted BIOS or the BIOS that's giving you problems, and then click program. What this will do is basically replace the corrupted BIOS with a hopefully working one. Okay, do you want to restart? Yes. And this should be fine now, but I just want to show you that this works and it doesn't like break the BIOS or anything by changing the BIOS in the middle of Windows. So there it is, it's showing a screen just like you would expect it to, and we'll be right back into Windows in a second. There you go. So back to the video. Okay, so here we are back in Windows, and there's three things you will want to do before you start mining. First thing is go here into AMD Radeon software, and when you click the cogwheel and go to graphics, click advanced, scroll down, and you will want to enable compute mode here. By default it should be graphics. Now I've already done that, so I don't have to, but in case you I just want to say that in case you get a black screen when you do this and wonder what the heck is going on, that you messed something up, probably your voltage is too low. Increase the voltage if you experience any sort of instability in Windows. By this point in the video you should have seen how to do that, but yeah. So anyway, you click compute mode here, it will flash the screen for a little bit and then come back and you should be fine. Next we will go here into Team Red Miner. Now this is version 0811. I'm using this slightly older version because I've noticed that on the newer versions there's a couple of bugs with my card specifically. Not sure if it's for everybody, but I experienced issues with those, so I just stick to this one. You will want to go here to Windows TDR Fix. Windows is going to flash here for a second. And it will say registry editor. Adding this information can unintentionally change or delete values. Doesn't matter. This is basically just fine. You do this because if you don't, the cards don't hash to their full extent. I'm not sure what that problem is there, but you do have to do this to get the most hash power out of them. And another thing I would advise you doing is, even though we just enable compute through this batch file as well. It just tends to clear an error that shows up when you use Team Red Miner early. Also, if you encounter any crashes while using Windows to mine, that they don't necessarily have to be caused because your card has a messed up voltage frequency ratio. Sometimes on some motherboards you have to go into the BIOS and enable 4G decoding to get the system to stabilize. This was the case on my B450 gigabyte motherboard that I've got here. So anyway, I'm just gonna show you what this card can do right now. We're gonna click here on Start Kawpow. I'm not gonna show you how to set this up so that it mines to your address on the pool that you want. This is just the default. We're mining probably to the developer's wallet address. So we're just gonna wait for the GPU DAC to get created and for it to start mining so we can see some results. One more thing I want to point out is you're probably not going to want to leave the fan speed at auto. I've provided tricks, an older version of it, so you can just open it. I wouldn't touch the voltage here. This can be pretty dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. And click fix here and just enter whatever you want here, whatever keeps the card cool. I've entered 60%, and this will basically keep the card running at 60% fan speed all of the time. You don't have to worry about it. I want to show you also how much power we're using with the settings that I showed you earlier that we applied to the card. This is hardware info, and if we look at GPU chip power, we're using about 205 watts here. Now, as I said, this is probably my worst performing card when it comes to how much voltage it needs for a given frequency. My other cards do much lower, and for example, I have an XFX card that pretty much this is what it gets cache rate wise with the same settings. And that card only draws about 190 watts maybe. Now, the Kawpow algorithm does vary in intensity. You do have to keep that in mind. Now we're getting about 18 mega hash, but I bet in a second we're gonna go up to 19 or something like that. With a little more tuning, maybe increase the frequency slightly, or something along those lines, you will probably be able to hit 20 mega hash. So what else did I want to say? Yeah, of course. So you'll probably remember that we set the voltage to 1 millivolt and 1 volt and 36 millivolts. If you look at the real voltage that the card is drawing, it's just barely over 1 volt, so there is V droop. You do have to keep that in mind. What you set in the BIOS isn't necessarily what the card will run at under load, and what actually matters is what voltage the cards run at under load. So it's pretty much different for every card. You're gonna have to see what your card does, and that's pretty much it. We're mining successfully Ravencoin. Thank you for watching, and I hope this was helpful. Adios!